Hey, this is Heath Weaver. I'm the remote executive, and I want to cover the topic of order and chaos. Um, so, and these videos, I'm just kind of ad-libbing at the moment. I think at some point, as I get better at this, I'll try to make more structure or make it more entertaining, all that kind of stuff. But this is really aimed for people who are more senior, hopefully that are executives and or who are founders or people who have to deal with these problems at like kind of a higher level, not really for entry level people or for people who don't manage quite a few other people. So when you're looking at this question of order and chaos, the way that I look at this is that whenever I've come into new businesses or when I've come into a business and start to take over a business that a kind of a founder's been running for a while, typically there's a lot of chaos. And that's just because like as a founder kind of, brings in other people and is having to do a million things. It's just like a scramble to get everything done for the most part. And one of the biggest signs for service providers and you could even look at it from a SaaS company, you could look at it from almost any company. The amount of chaos that's happening inside of the company usually is then reflected in the inconsistency of the service. And that could be in terms of bugs in an application, or it could just be that different people within the organization provide the service in different ways. And that could be like an internal service like human resources. So I mean, one person the founder could interview and do job like hiring and all of those things in one way. And then like the person who's responsible for talent management could do it in a totally different way. But that's in every area, like especially in the actual service delivery. If you're actually doing like client-faced services. So and where does that chaos come from? It's just that even if thing is written down, it's actually really hard to get two people to do things in the same way. It's like incredibly hard. So yeah, you can't just give them a manual and then say like, okay, read this and get the same result. It just even that they'll get closer, but just even that doesn't work. It requires a combination of especially showing them how to do it. That's the first thing we learn by watching each other, and that's another video I'll do that I still need to make, which is just like why remote work. It's one aspect of remote struggling is you can't just show people what you're doing very easily. But if you show people, usually they're going to be much more likely to copy you because that's a human thing. The other thing you have to do is you have to create training materials like videos or walkthroughs and things like that. And then you do have to write things down, and then you have to control what the person's doing and then point out where they're doing it wrong. So it's even very, very smart person, they can come in, they still are not going to do, a lot of times they're not going to do it in exactly the way that you expect. My wife, she's a doctor, and they're the smartest people around, like in there, and lives are on the line, and they've got a lot of protocols, and people just still make mistakes. So, and even for her, not necessarily a mistake, but she does it in a different way because she may have had a protocol in another hospital, so she's kind of like relying on that, and then she needed to change it. So the more senior doctors have to like sit down and show her how to do it, and then like point it out, and it'll take some months, depending. It could take weeks, could take days, could take months, could never happen. So that getting things to order from chaos is like actually a pretty hard problem. And remote work actually makes that, there's some aspects of remote work that can make that so that it can go quite smoothly. And then there's some parts of it that are difficult with it. But what I want to talk about is just from a senior level, order and chaos, that the goal is not always like just automatically order. It shouldn't just be always order. Chaos is not a bad thing. And what I can tell you is that it's like when you have a whole bunch of people who are doing things in exactly the same way, and everybody's just kind of like, this is the way that we do it, you just don't get a lot of innovation inside of that. It's just people generally, even if you're telling them, oh, I want innovation, I really want innovation, it doesn't usually work. It usually doesn't translate into innovation. It'll take somebody who actually just doesn't want to do things in the way that you want to do it because they think they have a better way, oftentimes, to actually like change the process at all. And so to get that kind of disagreeable person often comes with the traits of disagreeable people, which mean they're not very fun to work with a lot of times because they're just like, this is a stupid way of doing things. Like let's do it differently. So having that conversation to where you have people who either have done it in a different way, and like, so they're going to come in and they're going to use what they've used on your processes, even though not necessarily optimized or fitting there, but just because they know another way. That's some level of innovation, but most of the time that just breaks things, and just like most of the time what I've seen is that really doesn't just improve stuff. So generally, what within the business community, what I've seen that most people are kind of onto, which is that, like, if you have a very orderly company and things are optimized, and you have a systematic way to do things, the way to be able to get the innovation is to follow like kind of a process for innovation, which is like, reviewing competitors, seeing what they're doing, especially interviewing clients, customers, trying to see what kind of things that, like, where they have problems, and then just like looking at how important that is, and just like kind of following that path of innovation through kind of systematic improvement. Also just looking at like what's working and not working, and then just like coming up with hypotheses and trying different things like that. It's a slow process, and it's just like that's how it is. But for the entrepreneur, or for somebody with a smaller business, or coming into a business that's quite chaotic, like what the executive needs to do is to be able to sort through all of that chaos and try to find the parts of it, the better performing parts. So if you have two people who are doing something quite different, and it'll almost always be like that, like with Pareto, and like with the way that you look at that, like you're going to have a set of people who are far more productive. A lot of times when you come in, you kind of might look at what most people are doing, and then implement that, and then actually just like choke the high performers. That's very typical for larger organizations, just because it's like you don't want to rock the boat type thing, and you've got 50 employees, and you're like in one area, and you're like, oh well, how do you mostly do that? So like, okay, this is our new way. Instead of looking at like the harder better performing, you kind of pull it down to the worst performing average. So really what you want to look for on any team is to try to sort through where you have the best performance inside of there. So once you start getting your unit delivery in there, which I discussed in another video, you get that unit delivery in there, and like you can kind of see who's actually really productive, and then you really have to see the outcome of that production. So not just hard working or delivering a lot of units, but those units actually produce the best results. So when you're able to see that, then you're going to look at how they're actually doing. And what I've had to do in the past at some companies is I just take that person with myself and another manager or something. Like we take that person into an office, and we just do a kind of interview of them. So we interview them for maybe an hour or two, just walk us through their job, and just ask as many questions as we can as to how they actually work, and just try to get into the details. And often if you have a laptop there or something, you can go through it with them and kind of watch them do certain things. That works really surprisingly well. And with AI now, like I've been doing that for years, but with AI now you can take that conversation and like turn that into documentation very, very quickly. Then to get that into training is like, okay, once you figure out which parts of those are key, then you can have them do it again and record them. But then more than anything is just that person, you've got to incentivize them one way or another to start becoming the trainer of everybody else on the team, or that you see what they're doing and then you start training everyone, or HR sees what they're doing and HR starts training everybody. But basically it's like you're just going to establish a new base level. Now, you might not want to do that. You actually might want to just maintain a high level of chaos in a particular team. I've been in companies where you have things that are done quite differently, and like they just have very different approaches to things, and I've just been happy to just let them do it like that. That's often been when, let's say you're working for larger company, or you have employees who are working for clients from larger corporations. And the reason that I would just let that kind of chaos exist inside of there is just because I wanted to see how it would play out. I wanted to just let them do what they were going to do. First of all, because they were very talented and they had thought through it and they had a process. And second of all, because I didn't want to just say like, okay, we're going to force this process over to this process and merge them, and then this is our new process, because it could create like a lot of difficulty for everybody involved in it. But for most of the case, I think the last company that I was leading, that one, when I came into it, there was just a lot of client churn, like when I first got there, because the culture had gotten to where, where they'd kind of they would go, the client would complain and they would go to fight the fire. And then in fighting the fire, they would let up on the work of the other clients. So, and then everybody would celebrate when they solved that, they put that one fire out, while at the same time, 5 or 6 other fires were about to start up. And then when the next one hit full tilt, like then everyone would jump on that. So all the employees like actually thought they were doing really well. Like when they looked at it, they were like, yeah, we're solving all these problems. We work together really well as a team. And it's just like, yeah, you're just causing all the problems. Like your way of working is causing all the problems. So at that point, we're just like, okay, no, we're going to stop that way of working, and we're just going to implement really solid processes, because the majority of the people spend all their time fighting fires. So then you just implement processes and make everybody work in a similar way to avoid the problem in the first place. Now that created a less dramatic workplace, and a lot of those people found it very boring and were not very interested in that, because they no longer had like that dopamine fix of the manager saying, oh, we solved it, yay. Oh, by the way, this other client just churned, or this one's complaining now, and then you go fix that one, and the one that had the problem in the first place, the reason that they had gotten upset was because like they were ready to leave. So then you go off of their account and go work on another one, and then this one leaves because they're like, okay, now I'm fed up. You solved my last problem, but now you're again like neglecting the work you need to do. So then they leave, and the clients, the internal people would never think like, oh, like my behavior caused that. Like the fact that they would be, oh, well, I'm doing a good job because I solved this other problem. But then the client that just left, like they would just be like, oh, we did all this work for them. Why are they unhappy? So that's just so typical. I've seen that in I think in every service business I've ever been in. Like when I first come in, it's just so typical, because like we're really drawn as humans into that emotion. So like as a senior leader, most of the time you want to get rid of the chaos. Most of the time. So you want to look at what you're offering, and you want to reduce what you're promising to people, because you actually can't deliver it, and you just want to do what you say that you will. Start at that basis. And the only case is like, if you're so far off of what the market can offer in terms of what your delivery is, then it's like, okay, you probably are better off going to find another job. To start another company, do something else. If you can't even deliver like the basics that the industry expects, but that's almost never the case. So it's better just to reduce what you're saying, get your salespeople to promise less, like force them to promise less, just get them to promise what it is, and just be like, get everybody so that those processes are really set up so that you actually deliver that. And then at that point, then you start the interviews, you take whoever's doing the best job of that, you make that into your new way of doing things, and then you kind of reverse engineer the units you need to deliver in order to deliver that level of service. And then once you do that, then you can start increasing what you promise. Going back to that previous company, when we got rid of all that churn, and then we increased the production that we could do by I think it was like 300% or something. It was a massive increase in the amount of units that we could do year over year. I think it went from something like 3,000 to over 12,000 or something like that. And so that once you get that going, you can once you get everybody rowing in the same direction, you get them all working in the same way, you've done the interviews, you've set up the processes, you've done the training, you've got your internal system so that it's like set up that you can actually like record and show everybody the units they're producing, and measure that really well. Then you're just going to see that your production is going to go far higher. That's just normal, and you're going to deliver a consistent service at a lower level, but eventually you're going to then be able to kind of use that slower optimization to get it to eventually improve the innovation that you have. Now, I think from when you look at, like, for example, if I look at one of the companies I'm working with right now, this is emailsanddeals.com, and that's like a coupon site, and it's like trying to find, like, from a SaaS standpoint, even though the website has let's say a consistent delivery, it does the thing that it's going to do. Like having a lot of variation on the web pages, like actually letting people try different things is a very good idea on it for the moment, because it's not like a leader in the industry. It's not something which is like picking up a ton of traffic and things like that. So you have like a lot of room just to continue to experiment in a fairly broad way until you find, like, let's say an approach to business that works well. The another business that I work with that does training materials. or online courses and things. Like for that one, it's the same kind of thing as you have big variation in terms of the trainers. Like you have one course which is where really the people really like and the trainer's really engaging and interesting, and another one is just like so boring. It's like so uninteresting, and like that in that kind of case, it's not easy to tell. I mean, it's almost impossible to get the trainer to change their behavior if they've been doing that for 15 years and they're just like super boring. It's just rather like, okay, we're going to stop working with that person. But at the same time, like there has to be some way of starting to create systems that will, let's say, require a trainer to behave in certain ways within the class and to kind of make a better offer, so they're not just phoning it in like, oh, I've been doing this course for 15 years. Yeah, well, the industry's changed, like obviously in 15 years, like, and your delivery needs to change or you're not going to continue to coach with us. So in that kind of case, it's like, they need to be shown what a better course is, but then really also it's just a talent problem to see whether you keep that person or not. So in every situation, it's like you've got to look at that between do we want to let trainers, do we have a bunch of great trainers, for example, that have many different approaches and just let that chaos exist and be very different because we don't yet know what the ideal way is? Or do we want to really we kind of know more or less what it is because these are very popular and these ones are not popular. So we want to just see if the person can follow the direction for how the popular ones work. And if they can't, get rid of them and bring somebody else in that can actually do it in a way that's more engaging. So just kind of that process all the time. Allow for chaos to look for what the best results are, to look for the innovation, to look for the improvements. Or if you've got that at least dialed in, bring it down to a level that you can consistently deliver what you promise, and then innovate on it as you go along systematically to get that better and better. So I hope I found that I've just looked at that year after year after year. I've looked at at so many different businesses, and it's just kind of always the case that it's when you come in, managers have a very hard time a lot of times really telling people exactly what to do. They always think that employees actually know what they're doing, and as a founder, they often don't feel all that confident that they know any better, because they probably don't. So they kind of rely that person has some idea, but they don't. They almost never do. And if they do, they don't write it down. They don't systematically, they don't consistently deliver themselves on what they're supposed to. They don't do the same thing the same way twice in a row, hardly ever. So just you just have to assume that everybody that's coming in, the first thing you need to do is basically document their work. You need to force them to kind of break that down into what they're going to deliver, break that down into units, start getting it into your operating system, rework it, get it recorded, get it written down, and then just systematically improve that. Unless that particular department is something where you want innovation to happen, and that's probably in things that are client facing or customer facing. It's probably none of your back end processes do you really need innovation. Maybe just at when you're dealing with interviewing for employees. Maybe in the really in the analyst part of things like finance and things, there's definitely some room for variation inside of there. But there's just no reason that in compiling the reports that you're going to analyze that you'd have variation. There's just no reason that in how you're going to set up your job posting that there's variation, or how you actually go through that. It just needs to be written down and then systematically done, and just build those units out, and just, you don't need to reinvent that. It can be improved a little bit at a time, but there's no reason to have two HR people doing that in totally different ways. It's just silly to do that. So just stop that from most of the positions. And then just look at where you do want variation, and then allow that variation to happen. But for the most part, you're just looking at how do you get rid of the chaos and create order in everything that you're doing. Okay, good. Well, bye.